Good morning, everyone. My name is Gabe Green. I am the Director of Artistic Development at La Jolla Playhouse, and I'm welcoming you to this month's Coffee with the Playhouse. We have another great lineup today. We're joined by Tyne Rafaeli, the director of last season's production of the Coast Starlight, as well as our next season's production of Mother Russia. We're also going to be joined by Alyce Smith-Cooper and Shammy Dee, co-creators of our newest digital wow show, Spittin Truth to Power While Light Leaping for the People. While we wait for everyone to take their seats and for the proverbial house lights to dim, we're going to play our customary game of trivia. Now, for any newcomers, here's how it works. We're going to be asking you 3 trivia questions. You're going to write them down and email them to marketing@ljp.org, and you'll be entered for an opportunity drawing to win a Starbucks gift card. Because here at the Playhouse, we don't just understand your caffeine addiction, we enable it. All right, here we go. Question number 1. What was the first digital wow show? Yeah, so back in March, right after the global pause, we pivoted and turned our Without Walls program into the Digital Without Walls program. And what was the very first show that we released? Write down that question and hold on for question number 2. The Coast Starlight was set on a train traveling from Los Angeles to where? You may remember that play involved 6 strangers, all of whom were on the eponymous train, getting on and getting off at various stops. The final 2 passengers disembarked at the end of the line. Where was that, or is that, in real life? Here's question number 3. Which guest on today's Coffee with the Playhouse was recently named Poet Laureate of the San Diego Veterans Museum? As always, keep your ears open. During the broadcast, you may hear one or more of the answers emerge in the interviews with our guests. Once again, send those 3 correct answers to marketing@ljp.org, and you will be entered into a drawing for a Starbucks gift card. Without any further delay, I want to turn it over to the the managing director. You just got a demotion, Debbie. I'm sorry. The managing director of La Jolla Playhouse, Debbie Buchholz.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I actually don't look at that as a demotion at all. I think it's a bit of a promotion. In any event, welcome. I'm Debbie Buchholz, and I'm the managing director of La Jolla Playhouse. And it's wonderful to welcome you to our latest Coffee with the Playhouse event. I'm hoping that I actually know all the answers to the trivia questions. I think I do. But I want to thank all of you who've been participating in our digital Without Walls productions. I'm hoping that you've been keeping up. Frankly, by the end of this year, we will have released 14 new digital Without Walls productions, which is keeping us all very, very busy. Hopefully you've seen the most recent episodes, there we go, of Walks of Life and the Society of Wonder. And finally, also, You Are Here is going to be available to be streaming starting on November 16th. We've been busy in our education department, creating and delivering many, many online offerings for educators and families and students, such as our Play at Home short plays for young audiences, some virtual field trips, and much, much more. In any event, we're going to move on to the main event this morning. It is now my pleasure to introduce you again to Christopher Ashley, the Rich Family Artistic Director of La Jolla Playhouse, to kick off, there we go, our conversations with some very exciting artists. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Thank you for a beautiful introduction. I am talking to you from a slightly darkened room. This is the room where we're editing the Netflix presentation of Diana, the new musical. So imagine editing happening in the rest of my time in this room. Delighted to be with all of you again this morning. Our first guest today is Tyne Rafaeli. She's a director who is exploding onto the current theatrical scene. She directed last season's world premiere of Coast Starlight at the Playhouse, and she'll be directing the world premiere of Mother Russia in our upcoming season. So she's deeply in our lives. We're delighted to have her. You would also know her from off-Broadway plays, including Usual Girls at the Roundabout Theater, I Was Most Alive with You at Playwrights Horizons, and the New York premiere of another Lauren Yee play, In a Word. She's the recipient of the 2014 Sir John Gielgud Fellowship for Classic Direction. Please welcome to the screen, Tyne Rafaeli. Good morning,
Hi,
Tyne. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Really, really good. Where are you, Tyne, right now?
I am in New York City.
Excellent. Well, it's great to be with you this morning.
You too. Thank you for having me.
So Coast Starlight was the first piece we had worked on together. And I was so proud of both what you came up with and showed audiences, and also the whole development process. And that was so kind of beautiful and rich. And the play became better and better every single time that you and Keith got together to work on it. Can you talk about what it was like to work on that as it developed from early drafts to what we saw on stage?
Absolutely. I kind of fell in love with the piece almost immediately. Keith describes he and I of having a similar emotional metabolism. And I think that is, as Keith is prone to do, articulates it perfectly. So we connected immediately on some shared influences that are very present in the play, including most obviously Thornton Wilder's Our Town, and in fact, the entirety of kind of Thornton Wilder's body of work. So a play that kind of really speaks to people reaching across the aisle, which feels obviously incredibly pertinent this week, but a group of people kind of reaching across the aisle and finding surprising and transformative connections is something that just felt relevant now, and now that I'm talking about it almost a year later feels incredibly relevant and urgent and important to put into the universe. Keith is a kind of master of structure, and I really feel like his work, he builds a kind of cathedral in his plays where he build certain layers, and by the time you get to the end, like an incredible piece of music, all of those layers and threads come together in the most kind of musical and emotional and cathartic climax. So the development of the piece was really surgical. It's not that it ever needed a huge restructuring because Keith works in such a specific and structural way, but the threads and the specificity of who these human beings were, those are things that deepened and clarified in our process together. And I should say in our process with those 6 actors. Keith says that this train carriage should be as diverse and eclectic as the state of California itself. And so we really had kind of an open casting process where we found the right person for the role. And when we found the right person for the role, we then started rehearsal by really opening up the conversation and shaping the writing around who that human being was and the entirety of their identity, their age, their ethnicity, their race, their gender, their life experience to some degree. And so I would like to claim full credit for the development process, but it was intensely collaborative with that particular group of actors who influenced the writing. And as I say, Keith was just kind of so open to shaping it around who that human being was.
I feel like you can claim full credit. I feel like that's one of the amazing things about collaborative theater is like if everybody works together and you come up with something you're proud of, everybody gets full credit.
Yes, there we go. Everybody gets full credit.
That's the way. If I was a teacher, I would grade full credit for everyone who makes a good piece.
Love it.
I also love your concept of emotional metabolism. I'm going to spend the rest of the day trying to figure out who shares my emotional metabolism. Can you talk about, so the play was set on a moving train, passing through space and time. Can you talk about how you developed that sort of idea of the staging conceit and the turntable?
Absolutely. I feel like traveling by train is singular. It is a singular experience of movement because unlike a car where you're driving, or even as a passenger where you feel some kind of responsibility for the mechanism of the moving. A train, you abdicate responsibility for the most part, as a kind of citizen on the train, as opposed to someone who works on the train. You're abdicating all responsibility, which frees up your psyche to experience traveling through space. It is different from an airplane, because in an airplane, you are so far away from civilization that I don't think you have the same experience of moving through it. And that's what strikes me about the train. And a strange, beautiful detail in this whole thing is because I grew up in London, I actually shamefully don't drive. A lot of London kids don't drive because there is never any need to drive in London. It is not a hugely driving culture. And so when I would do site visits to La Jolla, I would take the train from LA. So it was strange that I was like taking the train from San Diego to LA and back again, and kind of had a lot of time to really analyze the singular experience of train journeys. And as you're taking that particular train journey, you know, you just pass through these towns and you can't help but kind of think of who are the people that live there? What would my life look like if I lived there? And you pass through them so quickly that you are putting yourself in relationship to the universe in a very particular way. And I think it unearths thoughts and reflections on one's own life in a way, as I say, that is very emotional. And so this is all to say that I wanted to find a way to embody that kind of movement in the theatrical space. I did not want it to be static. I knew that it had to move in some way. And as I say, Keith's writing is so musical that I knew that there had to be movement. And so through many, I find the simplest, I don't know if you find this, Chris, but the simplest of designs are always the hardest. Yeah. And so Arnolfo Maldonado, who was the set designer, and I went through like many, many iterations of what this design was going to be. And I think it was a process of stripping away. And so we ended up with this kind of floating platform where the passengers came up from seemingly nowhere. We really ended up with like a floating platform that turned and the sky, and that was it. But the first iteration of the design had way more of the train architecture in it. And it was just a process of stripping away until the sky, which is the cosmos, and this moving platform were the only two things in the space, which really distills what the play is. It's like the human being moving through the universe in relationship to the larger world.
As I was watching your production kind of evolve, I thought a lot about the connection between Coast Starlight and Come From Away, which were both in the same space, both shared the idea of a turntable and a very sort of evocative back wall, sky, in your case, wall, in the case of Come From Away. And they're very different show experiences, but they both share an interest in perspective and imagining yourself in other people's realities, and the kind of way that a turntable allows a kind of fluid shift of perspective. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So let's talk about your upcoming play, Mother Russia. Could you just give us a little what's the thumbnail of what's the story or what's the event of Mother Russia? Absolutely, it is a farce about two ex-KGB operatives who are in Soviet Russia, who are acclimatizing to capitalism as the wall falls and as communism loses its grip on that part of the world. So it's really about two systems in transition, and it is really a political farce. I wouldn't even say political, it is a farce in the tradition of someone like Dario Fo about the systems that rule our lives. Yeah, I love that. I'm so struck in that play about the idea that, like, if you've lived a life that you only ever had one choice of couch and one choice of car, like suddenly choice and all these Western influences, and like that you could go to a store and have to choose, is suddenly a mind-bending experience, and the kind of clash of Western newness and this society that was so closed for so long and suddenly is blown open.
Exactly. I don't think this is a plot spoiler in any way. There is a thread through the piece of one of the characters really needing toothpaste. Like he has run out of toothpaste and he just cannot buy new toothpaste because the choices are too big. He was used to being given one toothpaste his entire life. And now because of capitalism and a free market, he has all of these choices and he feels paralyzed. And that is really what Lauren is investigating for a play that is called Mother Russia. It is actually an exploration, of course, about capitalism and America and free will. And it's a comedy and it is very funny. And that laughter kind of opens us up to what is actually a kind of really interesting conclusion, or not conclusion, but an interesting end, which is sometimes when we are paralyzed by choice and we don't know which to choose, we will be led by scary people. And that is like the very end of the play has that kind of taste to it, which is a fascinating kind of thesis to explore.
Totally. And since we were had programmed this play and been talking about it, before all the craziness of 2020 began, but increasingly, I think the strands of the play that are about what's it like to live through a period where in your culture all the rules change, right? Like exactly. the living through a paradigm shift, and it feels like that. In the way that like when things change in the world, the same text can start to mean, slightly different things. It feels like what happens when you have to live through a big change is one of the things in the play.
That's exactly right. And what happens when the rules change every day?
Yeah.
Every day there's a new set of information and you're trying to recalibrate your life around them. So those things feel really relevant. And also the need to laugh. I mean, this play has always made me cackle, and in the context of this year, it just feels like the need to laugh is that much stronger. So I'm thrilled to be back in rehearsal with it whenever that may be.
It's one of the reasons I'm really happy to have it in the season that we will kind of open our spaces with is, I do think that there's a kind of hunger in the culture for humor and the pleasure of laughter right now. So I'm glad you're going to be joining us. I think you brought along a couple little teasers of where the design is going. I know it's very early, you're not finalized on any of it, but I think there were some early sketches you brought along. If you want to talk us through those.
Yes. I mean, the interesting thing about this design process, as Chris knows, is we were really in like the first draft as lockdown happened, and we continued working on it until it felt that we couldn't. And the reason why we couldn't is because we don't really know what the world is going to look like at the end of this. And we want to make sure that we are designing for the world that we are going to live in. So we kind of pressed pause. But we are kind of trying to create a Alice in Wonderland space in which I would say that the space is constantly going to surprise the audience and reflect the humor of the writing by constantly having a kind of Alice in Wonderland quality where things appear from nowhere. We also have this kind of narrator figure called Mother Russia. In the previous pictures, the woman with the scarf poking her tongue at you, that is the inspiration for Mother Russia. So part of the interesting challenge of the design is I need a place for her to that's her, there you go. I need a place for her to constantly be watching, almost like the stage manager in Our Town, to reference Our Town again, but like a very funny version of that, where she sits watching these two men try to come to grips with their changing lives, eating donuts and watching Yeltsin and Putin on TV. And so part of the design is where can she be inside of this kind of Alice in Wonderland world, which will constantly take the audience by surprise. And hopefully the design will be as funny and fun as Lauren's writing.
I love that there's an Alice in Wonderland vibe to the pictures I've seen so far. There's also a little nod to Soviet constructivist kind of sets,
Correct.
which is
Yes.
I find hilarious.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And as Chris knows, I actually trained as a gymnast as a kid and split my time between training in Moscow and in London. And so it's just so interesting that this play came into my life, because I went to that one McDonald's in Moscow when it was there. I was very young, but I have the visual memory of it. So that kind of Soviet architecture, exactly, that kind of Soviet architecture feels strangely familiar to me. It's like lodged in my psyche somehow. Yeah.
I love that. So we've talked about a show you did with Keith. We've talked about a show you're doing with Lauren. You work with all of these very intensively with all of these writers on their new work. How are Keith and Lauren the same and different as collaborators?
It's a great question. Oh, there's Keith.
Oh, that's a nice picture of you and Keith.
How are they the same and different? I mean, I would say they were same in the way that I've already described Keith to be. They're kind of musicians, both of them. The rhythm and structural, the way in which they layer things for a like really complex and fully formed dramatic experience is incredibly similar. And they're both musicians in the fact that like every line is intentional. Every line is a different instrument that is contributing to the kind of concerto of their plays, if you will. I think talking about emotional metabolism, they are very different in the music that they create. Like Lauren is, as I say, she is in the tradition of Dario Fo, which is like mostly, I don't want to generalize, I think both of these writers can do a lot, but Lauren is kind of a Dario Fo, the legacy of Dario Fo and the kind of like staccato, percussive, very funny, quick jumps, jump cuts. And Keith is way more kind of Thornton Wilder and like expansive and lyrical in the way in which he lets something unfold. So I would say that they were just two very consummate musicians, but they play very different instruments.
And you will go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it's such a thrill for me. It's part of the great thing that we do, Chris, is that we are allowed to conduct such different pieces of music all the time.
I love that. You will all know Lauren also from Cambodian rock band last season. So that was a real fave of many, many people I know. Many of the artists we've had come here, we do a little bit of commiseration about how shut down the American theater is, and sort of my heart goes out to especially actors like who are so rarely employed now. You seem like one of the lucky people who has been busier now than ever. Is that true, or is that just how it looks from outside?
I feel very fortunate in how things have kind of recalibrated around our new reality. I do feel very lucky. It took a second, like I was in week 3 of a rehearsal process for a play at Playwrights Horizons. We were literally about to step into tech. We got shut down. We rehearsed on Zoom for a few days, thinking that it might be just a few weeks of a delay. And when it became clear that that was a profound underestimation, it certainly took me a while. It has not been easy. It's been like 2 steps back, 1 step forward. And yes, I have come out of that, and I am in the throes of a lot of creative projects and processes, which again, I feel very fortunate about and feel very aware of how hard our community has been impacted by this, Chris, and have been trying to do my part in helping and contributing and engaging in the conversation. But I don't underestimate the enormous challenges and hardships that have impacted the theatre community at this time. Yeah.
Well, that is an amazing segue to the subject that we're going to talk to our two next guests about. So, Tyne, I'm going to say thank you for joining us, and we're going to bring you back in for a little Q&A at the end.
Amazing.
So, see you in a moment. Absolutely. So, as Tyne was just talking about, like so many theaters are shut down. So few people in theater are working at this moment. But one of the places a lot of people have looked is to online work, to virtual work. And the Playhouse really leaned all the way into saying, if we can't make live plays, which we can invite an audience into a space right now, we can make new art on your screens. And it felt like a very natural extension of the work we've been doing, site-specifically and immersive theater in our WOW programming and our WOW festivals. So we're next going to talk to two of our digital WOW artists who have been collaborating on a brand new spoken word piece with music entitled Spitting Truth to Power, Light Leaping for the People. Before we bring them to the screen, we've got a video to share of you. It's a rough cut of the first section of the piece that gives a kind of sneak peek into the developmental process. And this piece is called Sermon. So roll video when ready.
Mother, Father, Creator of all, I'm howling in rage at the undeniable injustices continuing with contempt for you. In this country, this experiment in consciousness, no recognition of brotherhood, common decency cast aside, compassion consumed by the lies and greed of darkness, refusing to admit defeat. Mother, Father, Creator of all, you will not be denied or continually disrespected. Victory lives in your word remembered. We, your people, built this bitch by our stolen blood, sweat, tears, souls shackled, scattered, but spirit not extinguished. We, your people of light, arise! We march, we arm. We aim to blot out ignorant envy of who we are and what we stand for. Spirit, ignited creativity. We will not miss our shot into eternity. We live to erase the seed of racism. Blind to our common creation. We are the agency of abolition. We declare reparations, restoration, renewal on this land with its native people and those who come seeking to grab freedom. It ain't free. Freedom ain't free in this infant democracy. We still longing, crafting, fighting for it. Still rubbing the sleep from our eyes, remembering the nightmare of the imposters trying to steal it. Mother, Father, creators of all, we belong to you.
Woo!
Love that. So congratulations. I'm very excited about this piece. We have on our screen the two central creators of that piece. Alyce Smith-Cooper, right just below me in the Brady Bunch boxes, is a member of our Playhouse Leadership Council, a group dedicated to working with the Playhouse. This is community leaders who, together with the Playhouse, reach new audiences. She is a celebrated San Diego poet, storyteller, actress, and community activist. She has been recently named Poet Laureate of the San Diego Veterans Museum and is the co-author of the Gumbo Pot poems. Also with us is Shammy Dee, an accomplished musical artist and DJ who you may recognize from our production of Tiger Style, as well as our opening night celebrations for years and a decade He has played for some of the world's top brands, including Louis Vuitton and Dior and Adidas. And his original music has charted 3 #1 singles of his debut album, Transcripted Thoughts. Please welcome Shammy Dee and Alyce.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. What up, what up, what up?
I love that. So this piece, for me, one of the first moments with this piece was we were sitting at a Playhouse Leadership Council, and Alyce, you started talking with such sort of clarity and passion about the need for intergenerational discussion as part of one of the keys to living in a more just universe is the generations talking to each other. So it's such a delight to see the two of you collaborating this way. Can you talk to us a little bit about the idea and the concept for the piece and how it emerged?
Well, I'll start by first of all saying thank you to everyone at the Playhouse, and I cannot leave out, even though she's not represented here physically today, Jaco Kitchen. It was, she's an amazing human being and an amazing creative person. And so because of the conversation at that PLC meeting, she evidently had the idea and came to you with it, Chris, that perhaps Shammy Dee and I could work together and see what we could put, what we could put together, what we could do. And that was it was right after, it was the first PLC meeting after everything had shut down. I think Fly had just, we weren't able to finish the run of Fly. So it was about that time. And she came to you and then she came to us and then we met on Zoom because, you know, we couldn't meet any other way. And that's the way we have been meeting for the most part since we started the process. So it's been an ongoing experience with all of the challenges that the COVID situation has brought with it.
Absolutely. Shammy Dee, do you want to talk at all about your experience in like plunging into this piece?
Yeah, it's been, it did not, this idea, as the video you just saw, is not what was the initial, like we had no idea. So we had literally at least months of conversation on Zoom between the three of us, Alyce, myself, and Jaco, and just like what does intergenerational connection mean? And we kept digging, and then it was revealed to myself that Alyce has experience of preaching. And so at one point in the conversation, we landed on this thread. This was a few months in. We landed on this thread of church. And the moment that happened, everything just kind of connected for me. And she had been writing pieces. We'd been going back and forth. And I had buckets of music that I was like, here, what do you think? And so we were tossing ideas, and it initially was going to be just music and like one piece. And then when the church idea came together, it all kind of coalesced into this arc of 3 pieces related to church. And then we were like, well, you can't just have a song by itself. You got to have a music video. Like, so it evolved into what you saw, the first of 3. And here we are.
And as you said, like the first 3 pieces, I guess, are currently titled Sermon, Communion, and Fellowship. So the kind of preaching aspect kind of flows through all of the pieces. How did the idea of the sort of intergenerational conversation play out either in your work or in the piece you made?
I'd like to speak to that because it was so embedded in my spirit that it was a necessary kind of thing, because not only was COVID happening, but all of the civil unrest and everything was just layering. I love that Tyne brought that concept, that everything was layering to what had to be something that would be transformational to our culture. And so therefore, there was no way to leave out all of the people who were being impacted by the violence and the hatred and the compassion and everything that was going on. And so with that in mind, and deadlines coming, because that was always help, there there was a piece that started to evolve from me, and it was an outcry after one of the major affronts to all of us in a violent, racially oriented kind of way. And so finally, my heart just couldn't take it anymore. I just started spitting. Essentially, I was just, in the front of the mirror. Just that's why I knew I was spitting. And so therefore, something had to evolve. And so I just started typing it out. I sent it to Shammy Dee and I said, listen, well, what can you do with this? What kind of images can we superimpose upon this? And what kind of music can we thread through these amazing images and words that have been compiled? So that was our email experience. This is this. What can you do?
Yeah, and in the layering of, so she sends this to me, right? And it's just like hot fuego, right? It's just fire in my inbox that I'm like, well, I got to do something. How do I maintain the heat and support, like make this even more flamey than what I hear now? So I'm like, all right, what's happening relative to like current times? And if the Time magazine covers that were coming out during the protest, they're the first two images in the video. They are, one of them had like 2020 and it crossed out, or no, like 1969, and it had crossed out the year and it said 2020 underneath, one or the other. And there was no difference as to what was happening then and what is happening now. And that then started to become a through line as to also what an intergenerational connection looks like, because my struggles are the same as Alyce's struggles. And it's literally no different. I am fighting for equality in the same way the generation before me were. So it's crazy to consider like that has not changed. And those layers from then continue to build even to this day. So that was a very tangible layer that we all felt, also given COVID and that we had to be at home. It was just such a central focus for everybody. And I think that was part of the reason that it spread so as far as it did, thankfully, that the globe was able to respond in such a way that was supportive of these movements.
Not just the globe, but the entire campus. I mean, for anyone who's never been to UCST's campus, we were using spaces right there on campus, the Shea Cafe and the murals. I mean, they've been there for years.
Yeah.
And we were using, they were maybe some minor changes, but we were using what was already there and has been there for a long time, as well as other scenes that you will see. I mean, we didn't travel very far at all. We were right there on campus, and experiencing so much of the same, but yet with a different costume or flair, as it were. I mean, I was dressed in, that hat that I wear. I brought that from DC, 20, 25 years ago. Well, that one, that one comes from another place altogether. That comes from Africa, but it's in another part of the show. But it's a building, that layered concept, that layering of experiences, of wisdom that's supposed to come from one generation to another. Where do we see it? How do we see it being transferred? How do we even see it interacting? So that's what you see primarily in that first piece, is that there's so much that is the same, and yet the babies that are coming along, the young people that are coming along, recognize that there's a different language. We're not talking about sitting in. We're talking about reparations. We're talking about being the agencies of change, actually moving change along. And so those were the things that were exciting to me. And those were the words that came. And that's how he began to respond. So there's yet more. That's just the very first rough cut of the first part. So here we go.
Yeah, I think I knew from the early conversations that the words were going to be really potent and the music was going to be amazing. I was so excited to see the rough cuts of this and see also the visual imagery that's joining the words and the music with such power. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Sorry, I can't contain myself.
No, I love that. Shammy Dee, do you want to talk a little bit about, as you've been developing the piece, there's a lot of ideas kind of circling right now about how audiences and other artists can join in the celebration of this message. Can you talk a little bit about where you think that's going?
Of course, of course. You know, with the advent of social media, like things can spread in a way that they never could before. If you think about the whole dog face, Fleetwood Mac, TikTok, you know about this?
I don't.
Okay, so there's this guy, I forget, it's somewhere in Middle America, and he's on his way to work. His car breaks down, and then he gets on a skateboard. Right? All right. So that whole thing exploded, right? And this guy all of a sudden has this insane viral fame, all based on one video that got spread. And the Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like that changes. Thank you. Cholo skateboard and a Fleetwood Mac. Yeah. Like this was impossible 5 years ago, 2 years ago, even in the way that these things spread. So we were discussing in a way like this is the new generation moving forward, right? And that we are all adapting to it in this digital age. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was open this up to other people of all generations. And we are taking sermon and making available the music so that people can get access to the music, people can get access to the text, Alyce's text, and respond with their own piece. We want to hear other people do their thing because this is just our words. How do other people interpret that? So this is something we are opening up. And if this is something you are interested in as a viewer, like holler at us. We want to hear your words on top of our piece. And so email us, literary@ljp.org, if you're interested. This is something that our gift to you, like we want to include you as part of the conversation because that's the most important part of it all.
Love that.
Well, it's based on the whole piece of creating the intergenerational conversations, the narratives that bring forth the change. And so this is, if we're truly successful, that layering, that final boost of climax has to do with getting the collaboration going, moving that what is that? That emotional metabolism. Yes.
Yeah.
We're all going to
circle. Love that.
Thank you, Tyne.
We're going to move this forward because that's what we're here to do. That's what artists are supposed to be about, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And what I can see in other cultures at other times have also been able to promote and be successful at in many situations. So that's my belief about it. And I'm really hoping that people will respond because that would mean that we've been successful at what we've attempted to do.
Facts. It's like the music you heard was not the original thing. So Alyce spits over, I'm layering Alyce's words over what I initially had. And then I'm sitting back and I'm like, nah, this doesn't work. It doesn't feel right. Like the energy doesn't respond as hard. I need to match Alyce. I need to support what she's spitting, right? So this is the intergenerational connection as well. How do I contemporize what we're talking about and make it accessible to all generations? And so I shifted the music into something that's more hard hitting, slightly a little more industrial with some of the snare sounds and whatnot. But now that's me being influenced by Alyce. Now we want other artists to be influenced by the music. You get the music, you get the text, you work your magic and show us what's up. And so you are the extra layer that needs to happen in order for this to keep moving forward. All right, I'll get off my soap. Like,
no, it's so good.
I got me juiced.
I love that. Hey, I just want to, at least you were doing a shout out to Jacole, and I just want to second that. An amazing woman, if you have not met her, very involved in the development of this piece. She's one of the moderators of We Are Listening together with the Rep and the Old Globe. She moderates the Playhouse Leadership Council. She's our artistic programs manager. She also does all of our local casting. The woman can do everything, and she's a real gift to us and to
our community.
Yeah,
to
I
our
love that.
entire community.
Well said.
Very much.
Let's open things up to some questions for that anybody has on their mind. Can we bring Tyne back to the screen? Hi, welcome back, Tyne. Good to see you. And let's see what people have on their minds and want to ask us.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are any questions that you have for any of today's guests, please put them in the chat. We did receive a couple of questions via email ahead of time. Tyne, one of them was for you, just noting the fact that you do direct prolifically around the country at many different theaters. And is there anything working at the Playhouse, especially on new works, that brings you back, that made you want to return from Mother Russia?
How long do you have? Because my experience with you guys was really special and taught me a lot about what I need to develop pieces in a kind of rigorous and deep way. I think my experience with you guys, which is singular, is just that it feels like you curate the rehearsal process around what the director and playwright feel that the play need. And, you know, I've never been asked before, how long do you think you need to rehearse the show? And that was, I think, one of the first questions that I received from you. So it just feels like it's tailor-made for where the play is, the rhythm of the work of the director, and you know, what is it that you need to make it as good as it can be? And I haven't experienced that before. And I will now try and take it into my other processes. So the fact that we had the kind of time and space to do the work properly just felt like a game changer. And then, of course, you know, we're doing a play about San Diego in many ways, was a really special experience in terms of Coast Starlight, to be specific. It felt like almost a site-specific piece. And the fact that you can get the bus margarita in the land and go for a swim in the beach between matinee and evening performance is no bad thing. It is a lovely bonus. But really, it was the fact that you guys really know how to develop new work and you really trust the artists that you bring on board and you ask them what they need is, as I say, it was a game changer for me. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Alyce, we had a subscriber ask, noting, of course, that you write across many different forms and that your poetry is just naturally very performative. But knowing that this was going to be this kind of theater, digital theater piece, did that present any new challenges? Did you think about the way that you were composing words in a different way, or did it feel like a natural extension of the poetry that you normally write?
I have to say it's a natural extension simply because I am not trained in any of this. I'm a registered nurse. That was my basic discipline. And so I've never had an opportunity really to go to school for any of this. Not that I haven't had the opportunity. I haven't taken the opportunity. I have been riding on a stream of intuition all of my life. And so it kind of pops up in different ways. So for me, when this opportunity came up and everything is going on around me in the culture, not to mention my own personal culture of family and friends, you just kind of wake up early in the morning, which is when my activity and that level happens. You wake up early in the morning and it's rolling. It's on. You got to roll with that at that point in time, or you got to live with the consequences. I don't like living with the consequences. So I just roll with what comes at the time that it comes. And so I am learning how to be a playwright because there's a military playwright program right there at La Jolla Playhouse. And can I just dovetail on what Tyne has said, because it may not actually answer the question, but it certainly lends itself to how this piece for us is coming together. The entire culture of the La Jolla Playhouse is such that it lends itself to the most compassionate components of creativity that I've ever experienced. I've worked in a few theaters across the country, and the way that people come together to support you is actually transformative in itself. Excuse me. So a lot of what came forth was a result from me of how I was treated in the very beginning, how I was invited in, how I was encouraged, and how I was challenged. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I sure said what I needed to say. So there you go.
Thank you. You did so beautifully. Thank you. Shammy, as a true hyphenate, somebody who's involved in music through composition, through editing, through mixing, and DJ, being a music director, do you feel like there's one particular aspect where you feel most at home and most free, or do you enjoy occupying the full spectrum of that?
That's a wonderful question. I've never been asked that. You are really making me think. I was thinking, to my right are my turntables where I live stream at home. Like DJing, there is a freedom to that. Like I can play what I want, but there's an interplay between DJing and the crowd. So if the crowd is not responding to what I'm doing, I'm like, I got to change it up. So that the crowd can have a good time, so we can party, right? Like if no one's dancing, what kind of, it ain't a party. So there's limitations to what that creativity is. I think the hyphenate, being able to do everything else, is more exciting because there is a freedom to that. At that point, it's about the execution of the idea and whatever best serves the idea. And what do I hear? What do I see? In relation to, Light Leaping or Spittin' Truth, it's like, what do we see? Okay, let's now put this together. And there's a freedom in more. I think there's more of a freedom in that for me than there is just DJing. So I like the multi-hyphenate stuff more.
Wonderful. And having seen, we shared a sneak peek of a rough cut from Sermon, and having seen the very rough cuts of the other two parts, I can just say we are all tremendously moved and so excited about sharing this piece with everybody. It's really magnificent.
We're high. Thank you.
The exciting thing for me has been to watch Shammy Dee really pull these skills together, because I think beyond your student experience, is this your first piece that you have done for public consumption?
Yeah,
Shammy
as like
Dee?
Yes, yeah. As like director.
This is like giving you a whole palette of colors to work with when you've been dealing with maybe one or two.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just like to say that the mix has been amazing and really heart opening for so many. And I just want to encourage you to continue to let it flow, because it's happening. It's definitely happening. What we envisioned, Chris, what you heard that day, this is it. It's happening. And Tyne, I just want you to know, and Gabe, that everything that you have done, talk about a layering. Oh my gosh. It's just the most amazing experience. I've never been to Moscow. I've never been to London. But now I feel like I've got a little piece of it because of what you have brought to it. And I'm just thrilled. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I feel the same. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We don't have a ton of time left, but Chris, two questions come in for you. One came ahead of time, which is, where do you see the Playhouse going over the next 2 years? Does diversity remain an important detail, as well as social issues? Where do you see the future of the Playhouse artistically?
Wow. Okay. So that I need like an hour of its own session, but let me just touch on that. I think it's more than diversity is more than a detail. I think it's core to the conversation that is next in our culture. If you think about 2020, like in every way, between the pandemic, between the anti-racism conversation that's happening in this country, between just the physical circumstances of everybody so separated, there's so much work to be done in terms of coming together, in terms of being able to listen and understand other people's experience, in terms of being able to understand what brings us, what commonalities we have, and also how we understand difference. All of that seems to me like the next conversation that matters absolutely in our culture. And I think theater is uniquely suited to forward that conversation. It's an art form about bringing people together, eventually in the same space, but even if it's on a platform like this, to consider our worlds and try to understand each other better. So I would say the however you want to put a name on the diversity work, the anti-racism work, the mutual understanding is the subject that matters the most to me. It will continue to matter at the Playhouse, and understanding each other is what we're for.
And Chris, the next question dovetails right on top of that. You mentioned whenever we're able to gather again. And Linda Kolb in the comments has asked, what percentage of patrons are needed to attend a live play to make it monetarily feasible to reopen the Playhouse?
Also, a very complicated question that every member of staff has been grappling with for months and months and months. I mean, I think one of the unique things about nonprofit theaters is our missions speak about the art we're going to make and the difference we're going to make. And the business model exists not as an end in itself, but in order to support that art. So the question of what is the business model that's going to create art that is important and matters to us to bridge us into a together but socially distanced. How are masks going to be part of that? What's outside? Does testing come into the world? There's all kinds of tools I think we're going to use to bridge back to a new normal. But I would, and we're considering every single one of them, and I don't think we have definitive answers yet, but we are going to be back for a 21-22 season. Information is forthcoming. The work of the artists has not stopped. The work on all of these pieces, the work online that Alyce and Shammy Dee have been talking about, the work for the next season that Tyne has been talking about. There's this wealth of art being created, and whether we're sharing that online, socially distanced, or in a full theater together at some point in 21, we're all really excited about taking that journey together and committed to it. And also the details are going to reveal themselves as the epidemiology and people's individual emotional temperature make themselves known in terms of what they need to feel safe enough to come back together. So it's a great question. It's a complicated question. And the main thing I would say is the Playhouse is excited and committed to taking that journey together with you.
In the short time we have left, I just want to again share our heartfelt thanks. Shammy, Alyce, Tyne, thank you for taking the time of your day, sharing your beautiful wisdom and artistry. A true treat to spend this Friday morning with all of you. I want to say to those of you watching, if you missed any part of today's show or want to recommend this episode to a friend, if you want to check out any of our past Coffee with the Playhouse conversations, subscribe on the YouTube channel, the page you're at now, the red subscribe button. Hit that to see all of that and a lot of our past and upcoming Digital Wow shows as well. Never miss any content by subscribing. With that, I would love to welcome back our Managing Director, Debbie Buchholz.
Thank you, Gabe. I'm echoing on my side. I'm not sure if I'm echoing to all of you.
Okay.
But I've been working with Chris for almost 13 years now. And every time we do one of these coffees, I'm constantly amazed that, first of all, I learned something new about his thought process. And I'm amazed at his interviewing skills, because I've learned so much from the artists that we're seeing today and in prior coffees. So I highly encourage you, if you're watching and you haven't seen a prior coffee, to click on and watch. We have some amazing artists that we have the pleasure and privilege to work with, particularly Tyne, Alyce, and Shammy Dee. So thank you to all of you for coming. I also want to thank all of you for your support. As a nonprofit regional theaters, one of the ways we get back up and running is through your support, and we appreciate that and your constancy with us all the way through. We're also very lucky to be on the UC San Diego campus, so I think we have the access to information and such, and we are committed and excited to come back. One other thing I want to make sure all of you are aware of is in the coming weeks we will have more information about our season. Hopefully you got the announcement about Christmas Carol, the Holiday Classic, which is being performed by the one and only Jefferson Mays, who is a UCSD MFE graduate and Tony Award winner for his performance in the Playhouse Born I Am My Own Wife. This is a fantastic new adaptation. And as a final sign off in our last moment or two, we would like to share with you a brand new Playhouse video that was just completed. We hope you enjoy it, and we hope that you will join us again at our next Coffee with the Playhouse on December the 4th. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
What can theater be? It can be a place to gather with friends. It can be a place to find joy. It can be a place to dream. It can be a place to celebrate. But a theater is more than a place. Theater creates empathy. It forges community. It starts conversations. Theater opens the world, giving us a glimpse into other people's lives. It disrupts the status quo and challenges our beliefs. Theater reflects our world, and on its best days, has the power to change it. We need theater, and everything it can be, now more than ever. Someday, hopefully soon, we will gather again. On that day, when the lights are cued, the actors again take to the stage, know that there's a seat for you.